President Trump says the markets are going to boom. Well, that's one word to describe what happened on Wall Street today. He also said his tariff rollout that happened yesterday is going, quote, well. That upbeat assessment comes less than 24 hours after the president, let us say, upended just about 100 years of understood global commerce. Today, Wall Street experienced the worst day since 2020. The post-election boom that the president, when he was president-elect, pointed to, well, that's been erased. Stock prices down, and Americans with portfolios, either for their retirement or for now, are facing genuine losses and the unhappy reality that they may be financially worse off than they were before Election Day. Tariffs, of course, are trade taxes, and the wide-reaching effect of them sent shockwaves across the world. Stock markets in Beijing and Tokyo sank to multi-month lows. Foreign leaders lined up to condemn President Trump's actions, promising countermeasures of their own. J.P. Morgan, for what it's worth, warns the president's tariffs could push the United States and quite possibly the rest of the global economy into recession. Despite all of this uncertainty, the president's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, sounded positive.
When the biggest economy in the world says, I don't like the way you're treating us, how about a little respect? Let the deal maker make his deals. Let the best negotiator and the best person who cares about America, let him make the deals.
Weijia Jiang joins me from Doral, Florida. Caitlin Huey-Burns is on Capitol Hill, but I want to start tonight with our Money Watch correspondent, Kelly O'Grady in New York. Kelly, as you know, there is a wag or two on Wall Street. Not many, but there are a few. And I heard one today say, well, if yesterday was Liberation Day, today was Liquidation Day. Lots of people selling off on the market.
Yeah, maybe not the best branding that you want to have if you're in the market right now. But yeah, look, you hit on it. I mean, this was the worst day, a single day for all of the major indexes since 2020. And what was that, right? That was COVID. So investors were looking at the potential impacts of tariffs, and they felt somewhat similarly to what was happening during COVID. I want to zero in on the S&P 500. So it lost, as you see there on the screen, nearly 5%. But in terms of value, it was nearly $2 trillion. Half of that came from those 7 big tech stocks we've talked about before. Magnificent 7, NVIDIA, Meta, Apple, etc. I highlight the S&P 500 because tech drives so much of it. And that is why if you're looking at your 401k today, it's not looking great because a lot of our 401ks are invested in funds that track the S&P 500. So a lot of investors said, look, tech is reliant on production in China, and that translated into losses for your 401k today.
And Kelly, what is the sense of prices as Americans try to process this, whether it's for items like furniture or items like clothing or things that they get at the grocery store?
Well, a lot of things are going to go up. I mean, look around in terms of what you're wearing, what's in your home. Most of what we buy is made elsewhere. And so in terms of what you're going to see in terms of price increases, electronics, TVs, phones, food at the grocery store, maybe not as much if Canada and Mexico had been a part of yesterday's reciprocal tariffs, but we do get produce from South America and food items from other countries across the ocean. In terms of how long, it's really going to depend on the industry. A lot of companies stocked up ahead of time, but for those perishable things and things that are coming across the border, you're going to see an immediate increase.
Kelly O'Grady, always a pleasure. Thanks so very much. Weijia Jiang joins me now from Doral, Florida. And Weijia, as you know, the president landed there recently, and he made some news on the plane, as he frequently does, engaging with reporters. And a couple of quotes jumped out at me. The operation is over, the president said. Let it settle in. But then he also said, tariffs give us great power to negotiate. Now they, meaning trading partners, to be affected by these tariffs, will do anything for us. So if the operation is over, are we still negotiating? Hard to know.
That's a great question, Major, because it's a confusing analogy that he's been using since this morning when he posted on social media saying that the situation that the U.S. is in because of decades of unfair trade with various countries is like a sick patient He said he did the operation, and of course it's going to take time in this analogy for it to recover, but he said the surgery went well, and so that now it's just going to take some recovery time, not only for this patient to, come to, but also to, of course, in his mind, start thriving. So let's step away from that analogy, though, and go, into what he actually said also on the plane on Air Force One. That's why my nose was buried in my phone. I wasn't being rude to you, Major.
Not at all, not at all.
It's from our colleague, Jennifer. Our colleague Jennifer Jacobs actually traveled on Air Force One with the president to Miami here, and he did make a bit of news. Not only did he say that negotiations were open and that, he's is up for a good deal. He said that every country has called us. He also said that he expected this tank to happen in the stock market. It was always part of the calculation, but he insists it is temporary and that, as you mentioned at the top, the stock markets are going to boom. He also, Major, acknowledged that it is going to take time for his plan to fall into place. He said that it will take about a year and a half or 2 years for manufacturing to get to where he wants it. That's really the first time he's attached a time frame to how long it will take for the supply chain to resettle itself to be reliant on American manufacturing rather than foreign products. And when you're talking about, a time frame for people looking for immediate relief on prices, that's a long time. Okay, when you're talking about a year and a half to 2 years of this adjustment period. And so I think, the president still has a lot to answer to, even though publicly he has to message all this confidence. Certainly, there are conversations happening behind the scenes about at what point could these negotiations happen? At what point could he take his foot off the gas and peel back a little bit, especially given what we are seeing?
And of course, Weijia, that is what so many trading partners are curious about. Is this something that's going to last until April 9th? Can you negotiate your way out of it until then or afterwards? And that also affects all sorts of investment decisions that people are caught in the middle of all these negotiations, real or imagined, or wondering about.
Well, yeah, and the other problem here, Major, is that, whether a deal is possible before April 9th when these retaliatory tariffs kick in, it depends on who you ask. Today, the press secretary said no. The president was very clear that this is a national emergency, that it is not a negotiation. His Secretary of Agriculture, who, of course, many farmers are listening to because they are worried about whether they can, continue with their plans this very busy growing season, whether they can get loans, whether they can import machinery that they need, whether they can sell any of what they're growing. She said that, yes, of course there is time to negotiate before the 9th because it's the president and he's the ultimate deal maker. But, in the end, Major, it's what he says that matters. And on Air Force One, he did just say that, he is open to that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next few days.
And Weijia, just to be clear, anytime you're looking at your phone to get news for our show, it is never rude to me. Not ever, 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 ever. Weijia Jiang, thanks so very much. Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now from Capitol Hill. So, Caitlin, I can't imagine anyone was saying anything about this particular news story up there today.
No, everybody was conveniently buried in their phones as well, Major, when we were asking about this. Now, I'll kind of parse through the reaction up here on Capitol Hill. Democrats, as you can imagine, highly critical of all of this. But there are ranges among Republicans up here. You have a group of Republicans who are gung-ho behind the president, whatever he wants to do. You have a very small group of about 4, maybe 5 Republicans who don't like this at all and, in fact, joined with a Democratic proposal last night on the Senate floor to try to take away or negate the emergency powers that the president used to impose those tariffs on Canada. Then you have another group of Republican lawmakers up here, some from industrial Midwestern states, some from farming states, who really are uncomfortable with it. It's not what they would do, but they're also willing to give the president some latitude here. I want you to take a listen to a conversation I had with Senator Ron Johnson. He's a big Trump supporter, but represents the state of Wisconsin. Here's what he had to say.
He's president, I'm not. He ran on this, and I hope he's absolutely right.
And if he's not, then what happens next? What can Congress
Again, that's
do?
hypothetical. I can't. I'm hoping it all works out.
Now, Major, you or someone at home may be wondering, wait a second, you're not just some man on the street, you're a member of Congress. Can't you do something about this? In fact, the Constitution lays out that Congress has oversight over trade and tariffs. But over time, over the past many years before Trump, Congress has really ceded a lot of its authority on trade, on tariffs, to the executive branch to be able to make these negotiations. So you do have some up here on Capitol Hill that are saying, look, we want to start to claw some of that power back. Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, big farming state, he introduced a proposal today along with a Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell of Washington state, another big farming state, to have Congress weigh in on tariffs proposed by the executive and be able to have a say here. Now, we are starting to talk to lawmakers to see if they are on board with this, and we're waiting to see what that looks like and if that would even make it through the Senate and make it to the House. But what Johnson also told me in that interview there was that he doesn't like this proposal. He doesn't agree with the president that this is the only way to exert leverage for the U.S., but yet he is willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because his constituents, and we heard this a lot on Capitol Hill today, Major, that Republicans are saying, look, this is what my constituents voted for. And going back to Weijia's point, a lot of people up here are willing to give the president some breathing room to negotiate. That's how they're taking this.
Huey-Burns on Capitol Hill with all that. I really appreciate it. Thank you.